Hidden Truths of a Religious Family, the shocking truth that changed everything. In a quiet town where everyone knew each other, the Winkler family seemed like the perfect example of a happy, loving household. But behind closed doors, their lives were far from perfect. This story reveals the secrets, struggles, and tragedies that led to a shocking crime no one saw coming. If you enjoy stories that dive into the twists and turns of real-life events, don't forget to like and subscribe for more gripping content. Let's dive into this unbelievable tale. Today, we're delving into a chilling and complex case, the Matthew Winkler tragedy, a story that unveils the hidden secrets of a seemingly perfect religious family. It's unsettling to realize that some of the most horrifying and unexpected crimes emerge from families that appear to have it all. Even in households considered the pinnacle of societal ideals, hidden crises can fester beneath the surface. These unseen struggles can poison relationships, erode trust, and, in some cases, culminate in unthinkable acts. The Winkler family, residents of the small town of Selmer, Tennessee, epitomized what many would consider a model family. Matthew Winkler, a 31-year-old pastor, was devoted to his ministry, his wife Mary, and their 3 young daughters. Together, they seemed to live a comfortable and prosperous life marked by health, happiness, and a strong sense of community. To the outside world, they were a family to admire. But, as the saying goes, still waters run deep. And beneath the surface of this picturesque life lay secrets that would later leave the entire nation grappling for answers. This case became so notorious that it inspired a book titled Sex and Murder: The Pastor's Secrets. And even today, many questions remain unanswered. On March 22, 2006, the serene town of Selmer was rocked by devastating news. Matthew Winkler was found brutally murdered in his own home. His wife, Mary, along with their daughters, 8-year-old Patricia, 6-year-old Maria Eliza, and 1-year-old Brianna, had vanished without a trace. The events leading up to this tragedy were as unsettling as the crime itself. That day, Matthew failed to appear at his church for the evening service, where he was typically joined by his family. Known for his unwavering dedication, Matthew's absence raised immediate concerns among the congregation. Calls to the Winkler family went unanswered, deepening the growing sense of unease. A small group of worried community members decided to check on the Winklers. When they arrived at the house, everything seemed normal from the outside. The windows and doors were intact, lights illuminated several rooms, and the sound of a television blared from inside. The house appeared lived in, almost as if the family was simply going about their evening routine. However, no one came to the door despite repeated knocking, and attempts to call the family remained fruitless. The drawn curtains obscured any view inside, leaving the community members anxious and uncertain. Despite the apparent signs of normalcy, something didn't feel right. Instead of immediately alerting the police, they sought advice from a respected elder in their religious community. Following his suggestion, they searched for a spare key to access the house. This decision, though unconventional, marked the beginning of an investigation that would expose a web of hidden truths, shocking revelations, and questions that linger to this day. After nearly an hour and a half of searching for a spare key, the concerned members of the community finally gained access to the Winkler residence. At first glance, everything appeared to be in order. The house showed no signs of forced entry or struggle, no broken windows, overturned furniture, or displaced items. It was as if the family had simply stepped out, leaving their home untouched. But the unsettling truth awaited in the master bedroom. There, on the floor. Only then was the police contacted, but by the time authorities arrived, the crime scene had been compromised. A crowd of curious onlookers, neighbors, church members, and even passers-by had gathered both inside and outside the house. Many left their fingerprints and shoe prints throughout the scene, inadvertently trampling over potential evidence and making the investigators' work significantly more challenging. The police transported Matthew's body for forensic examination, where it was determined that he had been killed by a single shot to the back, fired from a large caliber weapon. The bullet caused catastrophic internal damage, and Matthew likely succumbed to massive blood loss within minutes. The fatal wound rendered him incapable of calling for help, leaving him to die alone. Unfortunately, due to the contamination of the crime scene, it was nearly impossible to ascertain whether an intruder had been present or if this was a crime committed by someone inside the household. The investigators faced an uphill battle from the start. The absence of Matthew's wife, Mary, and their daughters, Patricia, Maria Eliza, and Brianna, only deepened the mystery. With no sign of them in the house, authorities feared the worst. Had they been kidnapped? Were they victims as well? The family's minivan was also missing from the garage, which raised additional questions. Could Mary and the children have fled the scene, or had they been taken against their will? Law enforcement launched a statewide search for Mary and the children. A yellow alert was issued signaling missing minors, and the public was urged to stay vigilant and report any sightings. The community, initially shocked by the tragedy, banded together to assist in the search, clinging to hope that the missing Winklers might still be alive. As investigators worked tirelessly to unravel the truth, the story of Matthew Winkler's life began to emerge. Born on November 21st, 1974, in the picturesque town of Henderson, Tennessee, Matthew Bryan Winkler was the youngest of 3 sons born to Dan and Diane Winkler. His family was deeply rooted in conservative Christian values, and he grew up alongside his older brothers, James and Daniel, in a devout and structured environment. Matthew's upbringing instilled in him a strong faith, a love for ministry, and a deep sense of responsibility. These values would shape his journey as a pastor and family man, ultimately leading him to the small town of Selmer, where his tragic story would unfold. Matthew Winkler was born into a family deeply entrenched in religious tradition. His upbringing was marked by strict discipline, unwavering faith, and an enduring legacy of ministry. Matthew became the 5th generation in his family to dedicate his life to preaching. His lineage included a long line of pastors: his father John, his uncle Michael, his grandfather Wendell, his great-grandfather Merlin Winkler, and his great-great-grandfather Merlin Paul Winkler Sr., all devout preachers of the gospel. Matthew's father, John Winkler, was a highly respected figure in their hometown. As the head of a local preacher's school, John played a pivotal role in shaping young ministers and was widely regarded for his wisdom and influence. Growing up, Matthew and his brothers James and Daniel were immersed in this devout environment. Their days revolved around Sunday school, church activities, and the teachings of their father. In addition to his religious upbringing, Matthew showed remarkable talent on the soccer field during high school. His skill and dedication earned him recognition as a standout player, with some even predicting that he could achieve international fame as an athlete. Despite his potential, Matthew chose to set aside a promising sports career to pursue a higher calling, Bible study, and ministry. Matthew's father's work required frequent relocations, so the Winkler family moved often. With every move, Matthew adjusted quickly. His outgoing nature and charisma helped him make friends easily and establish a positive reputation wherever he went. Despite these transitions, his education did not suffer. His teachers often noted his strong character, even if his academic achievements were unremarkable. By the time Matthew graduated from high school, the family had settled in Austin, Texas. With his natural charm and deep-rooted faith, Matthew seemed destined for the path he had chosen. He enrolled at Freed-Hardeman University, a private Christian college, where he balanced his studies with his growing passion for preaching. Under the watchful eye of his father, Matthew began to hone his skills as a pastor, gaining practical experience in ministry. After earning his degree, Matthew began his career at the Central Church of Christ in McMinnville, Tennessee. His dedication and ability to connect with others soon led to a prestigious appointment as a preacher at the Church of Christ in Selmer, Tennessee. It was there that he started his family and built a life that seemed idyllic on the surface. Mary Carol Freeman, who would later become Mary Winkler, was born in December 1973 in Guy, Tennessee. Like Matthew, Mary was raised in a deeply religious household that valued structure, discipline, and faith. She was the eldest of 2 sisters and grew up under the guidance of a father who served as a pastor in their local Christian church. Mary's upbringing mirrored Matthew's in many ways. She regularly attended Sunday school, participated in church events, and adhered to the strict rules set by her family. These shared values and experiences would later bring her and Matthew together, creating a bond rooted in their mutual faith and upbringing. While both Matthew and Mary came from similar backgrounds, their personalities and journeys were distinctly their own. Matthew's natural charisma and leadership complemented Mary's quieter, more reserved demeanor. Together, they appeared to embody the ideals of a devout Christian family, building a life centered on faith, community, and service. But as we now know, appearances can be deceiving. Beneath the surface of this seemingly harmonious union lay hidden tensions and unresolved struggles that would eventually erupt into tragedy. Mary Winkler's childhood was marked by profound sorrow and responsibility. Her family faced numerous challenges, most notably revolving around her younger sister, Patricia. Born prematurely, Patricia suffered from several severe health issues, including cerebral palsy, encephalitis, epilepsy, and intellectual disabilities. Her condition required constant care and frequent medical interventions. For years, the family clung to hope, seeking treatments and even experimental therapies in a desperate bid to improve Patricia's quality of life. Unfortunately, these efforts yielded little progress. Mary, deeply attached to her sister, became her devoted caregiver. She tended to Patricia with warmth, patience, and love, embodying a sense of responsibility far beyond her years. But tragedy struck in 1987 when Mary was just 13 years old. One evening, while giving Patricia a bath, Mary briefly stepped out of the room to gather additional supplies. In that short moment, Patricia suffered a sudden epileptic seizure. When Mary returned, she found her sister unresponsive. Despite frantic attempts to revive her, Patricia had passed away. For Mary, the loss was devastating. Racked with guilt and overwhelmed by grief, she began to blame herself for what had happened. The incident left her deeply traumatized, and she teetered on the brink of a nervous breakdown. Recognizing her distress, her teachers referred her to the school psychologist, where she finally found some relief through counseling. However, her father, a strict and devout man, disapproved of psychological intervention. When he learned about her sessions, he erupted in anger, declaring that such matters should only be discussed within the family. He forbade Mary from continuing the therapy, effectively cutting off her access to professional support. Though Mary obeyed her father's wishes, the lack of emotional guidance took its toll. She became withdrawn and shy, avoiding conflict whenever possible. Her unresolved trauma festered over the years, manifesting in psychological scars that would shape her adult life. After Patricia's death, the Freeman family, once again, Mary found herself stepping into the role of an older sister. She took on significant responsibilities, helping her mother care for the younger children while continuing to manage her own grief. These formative years shaped Mary's personality. She became known for her quiet demeanor, her willingness to help, and her tendency to internalize her struggles rather than confront them. Despite her challenging childhood, Mary's life took a new direction when she met Matthew Winkler. The two crossed paths shortly after Matthew graduated from high school. Mary, with her reserved and caring nature, complemented Matthew's outgoing personality and strong charisma. Their shared upbringing in devout Christian households created a bond of mutual understanding and faith. As their relationship deepened, it seemed they were building a solid foundation for a life together. Yet, the lingering shadows of Mary's past and the complexities of their personalities would play a significant role in the tumultuous events that would later define their lives. Matthew Winkler was a striking young man, handsome, athletic, and naturally charismatic. His charm earned him significant attention from women, but his strict religious upbringing instilled values that discouraged casual relationships. Matthew's focus was on building a meaningful connection, and when he met Mary Freeman, sparks flew. Mary, with her quiet demeanor and deep faith, found herself drawn to Matthew's confidence and energy. The attraction was mutual, and the pair quickly fell in love. Within months of their meeting, they introduced each other to their families. Both sets of parents approved of the match, and with their blessings, Matthew and Mary began planning their wedding. In April 1994, the couple exchanged vows, embarking on what they hoped would be a harmonious life together. The challenges began almost immediately. Shortly after their wedding, the couple welcomed their first daughter, Patricia. At the time, Matthew was still in college, and the financial strain forced him to temporarily put his studies on hold. To support his young family, he took a job at a construction site. However, the grueling physical labor proved difficult for him, and he soon left the position. During this period, the first signs of Matthew's temper began to surface. He grew irritable and prone to anger over minor frustrations, often directing his outbursts at those around him. Mary, deeply rooted in her upbringing of submission and obedience, despite these challenges, Mary remained dedicated to her family. She cared for her children with devotion and fulfilled her household duties diligently, yet beneath the surface, her psychological burdens and unresolved grief were quietly building, setting the stage for future turmoil. As Matthew advanced in his career as a pastor, Mary became increasingly withdrawn. Her struggles deepened when she became pregnant once again, only to face a devastating loss. The fetus died in her womb, adding another layer of grief to her already fragile emotional state. The loss was profound, but Mary's desire to expand their family remained strong. 2 years later, she was overjoyed to see the long-awaited positive result on a pregnancy test. However, this time she kept her pregnancy a secret for as long as possible, as if trying to shield herself from the possibility of another heartbreak. When her condition eventually became visible, those around her noticed her unusual behavior and growing isolation. Mary's emotional seclusion was not only a result of the traumatic events from her past, but also the toxic dynamics within her marriage. The Winklers, who outwardly appeared to be the picture of a harmonious and devoted couple, were hiding a much darker reality behind closed doors. Matthew, a man of authority and control, demanded obedience from his wife. While the couple maintained an image of mutual respect and trust, their neighbors had often overheard Matthew shouting at Mary, berating her over trivial matters. Rumors about tension in their household circulated quietly until one day, Mary appeared in public with a prominent black eye. When questioned, Mary dismissed the injury, claiming it was an accident. However, whispers of domestic violence spread through the community, tarnishing the image of the well-respected pastor. Few could reconcile the image of the charismatic preacher with the idea that he might be abusing his wife. Matthew's controlling nature extended beyond their day-to-day lives and into their private relationship. As time went on, he began pressuring Mary to engage in behaviors that clashed with her deeply conservative upbringing. He proposed role-playing, adult toys, and other ways to spice up their intimate life. For Mary, raised in a strict traditional household, these suggestions were deeply uncomfortable and unacceptable. Mary's refusal to indulge Matthew's desires angered him, and he reportedly tried to coerce her by force. These episodes left her distraught, but Mary's ingrained sense of loyalty and her fear of judgment kept her from seeking help. On one occasion, after an especially traumatic incident, she confided in her only close friend. Tearfully, Mary shared her struggles, pleading for discretion. Unfortunately, her trust was misplaced. The friend, despite promising to keep Mary's confidence, shared the details with others. The town was soon buzzing with rumors about the preacher's unacceptable behavior behind closed doors. These whispers not only further isolated Mary, but also began to damage Matthew's reputation. At the time, Matthew was working toward a significant promotion, the position of local church leader. His ambition was undermined by the growing gossip about his actions at home. Church elders who had been considering him for the role rejected his candidacy due to the scandalous rumors swirling around his private life. While Matthew grew increasingly frustrated with his stalled career, Mary became more withdrawn, her emotional wounds deepening with each passing day. The facade of a perfect family was cracking, and the pressures within their marriage continued to mount, setting the stage for the tragic events that would soon unfold. The growing rumors about Matthew's private life eventually caught up with him, leading to his removal from his position as a Sunday school teacher. Despite his previously good standing, concerned parents, troubled by whispers about his behavior, requested his dismissal. This loss, coupled with the rejection of his candidacy for church leadership, left Matthew with no choice but to step away from the community. Faced with dwindling opportunities and mounting scrutiny, the Winklers decided to leave their home and move to Selmer, Tennessee, seeking a fresh start. In their new town, the couple quickly endeared themselves to the local community. Matthew resumed his pastoral duties, securing a position at a local church, and Mary took on a part-time job to contribute to the family income. To those around them, the Winklers seemed to embody the ideal family. Despite the challenges they had faced, they appeared united, loving, and committed to building a better life together. Their neighbors and the church congregation saw them as a model couple. Proof: next door to the Winklers lived a young married couple with whom they formed a close bond. The two families often visited each other, celebrated holidays together, and shared news and confidences. Their relationship seemed to underscore the Winklers' integration into the community and their desire to leave their troubled past behind. During one such gathering at the Winklers' home a few months before the tragedy, Mary revealed something unusual to her neighbors. She proudly shared that Matthew had recently gifted her a gun for self-defense and had taken her to a shooting range several times to teach her how to handle it. According to Mary, she was a quick learner and had mastered the basics of shooting, even demonstrating impressive accuracy with her target practice. The revelation, though surprising, was brushed off by the neighbors as a quirky detail about the couple's life. No one could have imagined the dark turn this seemingly innocuous fact would later take. Despite their best efforts to rebuild, financial challenges persisted for the Winklers. Matthew's salary as a pastor was modest, and Mary's part-time work was not enough to cover all their expenses. To improve their situation, Mary sought additional part-time jobs, and she even began considering a career change. Inspired by her own experiences and desire to help others, Mary expressed an interest in pursuing a medical degree to eventually work in a clinic, particularly with children. However, as their financial woes deepened, Mary explored other, less conventional methods to improve the family's economic stability. She became involved in questionable financial schemes, attempting to address their financial burdens through fraud. While the details of her actions remained unclear at the time, her decisions would later emerge as a crucial part of the unfolding story. To the outside world, the Winklers continued to project the image of a happy, hardworking family. Yet beneath the surface, their struggles with finances, trust, and personal insecurities were taking a toll. Mary's increasing desperation and Matthew's need to maintain an untarnished reputation would soon lead to events that would shock their community and forever change their lives. Mary Winkler later claimed that she had no idea her actions were illegal and fully intended to repay the money she had taken. However, her fraudulent activities painted a different picture. Mary had altered the address of a bank account so that commissions and checks would be routed to her instead of their rightful recipients. Over time, she amassed nearly $17,000 through these transactions, a sum that eventually drew the attention of bank employees. Suspicious of the irregularities, the bank contacted the couple and requested they come in to clarify the situation. However, neither Mary nor Matthew appeared for the meeting, further raising red flags. While some believed Matthew was unaware of his wife's actions, others speculated that he might have been involved or at least complicit. After Matthew's death, Mary claimed in court that the fraudulent activities were not her idea, but rather a scheme masterminded by her husband. She alleged that Matthew had coerced her into carrying out the transactions while he remained in the background, ensuring he wouldn't arouse suspicion. This conflicting narrative only added to the intrigue and complexity of the case. When Matthew Winkler's body was discovered in their home, his wife and daughters were immediately added to the missing persons list. Fearing that they might also be in danger, authorities launched a statewide search to locate them. Initially, Mary was seen as another potential victim, a meek and shy woman who might have been abducted along with her children. However, as investigators dug deeper, a different picture began to emerge. Conversations with neighbors revealed troubling details about the Winklers' family life, and reports from the bank about Mary's fraudulent activities cast a shadow of suspicion. Mary quickly became the primary suspect in her husband's murder. Determined to find her and ensure the safety of the children, law enforcement focused on tracing Mary's whereabouts. They flagged the family's vehicle, monitored transactions on her bank card, and attempted to track her location using her cell phone signal. Mary was located just one day after the murder. She and her 3 daughters were found in a resort town in Alabama, enjoying themselves at a local amusement park. The discovery shocked investigators and the community alike. Far from being a terrified fugitive, Mary appeared calm and focused on giving her daughters a day of fun. According to later statements, Mary wanted to give her children one last joyful memory, knowing that her actions would soon separate her from them. She was fully aware that her time with her daughters would become rare and limited once she faced the consequences of her actions. When Mary and the children were brought to the police station for questioning, the 2 older daughters provided a consistent account of what had happened. They claimed that intruders had broken into the house, attacked their father, and that their mother had grabbed a gun in an attempt to protect them. The children's story, though sympathetic, raised more questions than it answered. Investigators remained skeptical, particularly given Mary's sudden flight and her connection to the financial fraud. As they pieced together the evidence, they began to uncover a more complex and darker narrative, one that would eventually lead to a courtroom battle over the true events of that fateful night. Initially, Mary Winkler's daughters, Patricia and Maria Eliza, told investigators a version of events they had learned from their mother. They said they heard a gunshot and saw their father lying on the floor, but they did not witness the shooting itself. According to their account, their mother rushed them into the car, claiming they had to leave quickly because their lives were in danger. Mary told the girls that their father was alive and in the hospital, and they would see him soon when they returned home. However, under questioning, Mary's narrative began to shift. She almost immediately confessed to the shooting, but claimed she could not clearly reconstruct the events of that morning. What emerged was a story of years of abuse and suppressed trauma that culminated in a single tragic act. Mary described a life filled with emotional and physical abuse. She claimed that Matthew had humiliated her for years, demanding total obedience and losing his temper over the smallest perceived infractions. According to Mary, he had also forced her into forms of intimacy she found degrading and unacceptable, which she said further eroded her sense of self-worth. She maintained that the financial fraud was another manifestation of Matthew's control, insisting it was his idea and that he had coerced her into executing the scheme while he stayed in the background. Mary's claims of mistreatment were partially corroborated by witnesses, including Matthew's former secretary. The woman had observed Matthew berating Mary on multiple occasions, even when she went out of her way to bring him lunch at church. Mary recounted that the night before the shooting, a heated argument had erupted between her and Matthew. The fight left Mary in tears, and the couple went to sleep in separate rooms. Mary said she cried through the night and awoke in a haze, unable to recall how the shotgun, kept loaded in the house, ended up in her hand. In the morning, Mary entered Matthew's room while he was still in bed and fired a single shot into his back. The blast knocked him to the floor, where he lay bleeding and gasping for air. According to Mary, Matthew, still alive, whispered, "Why?" Her only response was, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." After the shooting, Mary gathered her daughters, placed them in the car, and drove away, leaving Matthew to die. Forensic experts later concluded that Matthew, though gravely injured, had attempted to crawl to the phone to call for help but succumbed to his injuries before he could make the call. The shotgun used in the killing was discovered in the trunk of the vehicle Mary drove to Alabama. When questioned about why she took the weapon with her, Mary could not provide a clear explanation. Investigators speculated that it was an impulsive act, possibly stemming from panic or a desire to prevent the gun from being discovered at the scene. During the trial, prosecutors presented additional evidence to support their case. Among the items found in the Winkler home were role-playing costumes, which Mary claimed were emblematic of the humiliation and moral abuse she had endured in her marriage. These items became a focal point of the proceedings, with the defense using them to illustrate Mary's claims of coercion and emotional torment. Matthew's last words, "Why?" lingered over the case like a haunting refrain, reflecting the complexities of the couple's relationship. Was it a cry of confusion, betrayal, or regret? Mary's response, "I'm sorry," spoke to the profound pain and chaos that had defined their marriage and ultimately led to its violent end. When Mary Winkler was confronted by law enforcement, her reaction was telling. She turned pale and quickly became hysterical, unable to maintain a consistent narrative about what had occurred. Despite her conflicting testimonies, the court ultimately concluded that Mary was a victim of prolonged domestic abuse. The killing was seen as the tragic culmination of years of suppressed anger, humiliation, and emotional pain. However, the court also determined that Mary could not be entirely absolved of responsibility for her actions. In April 2007, after a lengthy and complex trial, Mary was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The verdict acknowledged the mitigating circumstances of her mental state and history of abuse, but the crime could not go unpunished. Initially, it was expected that Mary would face a prison sentence of at least 6 years. However, the court handed down a much lighter sentence, less than 1 year of incarceration. Of that time, Mary served only 2 months in a psychiatric facility, where she underwent evaluations to determine her mental health and assess whether she could regain custody of her children. In the summer of 2008, Mary was granted sole custody of her 3 daughters, who had remained in her care throughout most of the ordeal. This decision deeply angered Matthew's parents, who believed that Mary had deliberately murdered their son and had faced little consequence for her actions. They argued that Mary's lenient sentence was an injustice and that custody of the children should have been awarded to them. Matthew's parents launched multiple appeals in an attempt to gain custody of their granddaughters, but each one failed. The courts consistently sided with Mary, ruling that her daughters would be best served by remaining with their mother. This outcome only added to the family's grief and frustration, as they felt they had not only lost their son, but also their connection to his children. Meanwhile, the fraud case that had initially drawn suspicion on Mary never reached trial. Despite the evidence, the bank chose not to press charges, and the matter was quietly dropped, leaving many questions about her involvement unanswered. The case of Mary Winkler continues to raise difficult questions about the intersection of domestic abuse, mental health, and the legal system. While some see her as a victim who finally broke under years of mistreatment, others view her as a woman who took justice into her own hands and escaped full accountability. Thank you for exploring this harrowing case. If you're intrigued by stories of true crime and human complexity, don't forget to subscribe. Many more shocking stories await. The story of Mary Winkler serves as a stark reminder of the unseen struggles that can exist within seemingly perfect families. It highlights the devastating consequences of unresolved trauma, unchecked abuse, and the weight of societal expectations. What appeared to be an ordinary life was fractured by hidden pain, ultimately leading to tragedy. If this story resonated with you, make sure to subscribe and like for more compelling real-life tales. Your support helps us uncover and share these stories. Remember, understanding these events can help us be more empathetic and vigilant in our own lives. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.